Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, is currently facing legal challenges related to his alleged interference in the federal election. In a recent development, Trump has appealed to the D.C. Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, asking them to dismiss the case against him. He argues that as a president, he is shielded by a broad immunity that protects him from prosecution. Trump's legal team presented their case, emphasizing the framework of the government, the Constitution's text, historical legal doctrines, political history, Supreme Court precedents, and separation of powers principles. According to them, these factors collectively support the claim that no sitting or former president can be criminally prosecuted for official acts without first being impeached and convicted by the Senate. They further argue that if a president is acquitted by the U.S. Senate for specific conduct, that president cannot later face criminal prosecution based on the same conduct. In Trump's view, the indictment against him is not only legally flawed but also unconstitutional, and he insists that it should be dismissed. In a statement on his Truth Social website, Trump asserted that his efforts to challenge Joe Biden's victory were part of his duty as president. This echoes his previous claims that he was acting within his presidential responsibilities when contesting the outcome of the 2020 election. The legal proceedings took an interesting turn when the Supreme Court chose not to expedite a decision on whether Trump has broad immunity for his attempts to overturn the 2020 election results during his presidency. This decision by the Supreme Court means that the D.C. Circuit will now proceed to hear oral arguments on January 9. Once the D.C. Circuit makes its ruling, the Supreme Court will then have the opportunity to decide whether it wants to take up the case. This legal saga raises questions about the limits of presidential immunity and the extent to which a former president can be held accountable for actions taken while in office. Trump's argument for immunity hinges on the idea that pursuing criminal charges against a president for official acts should only occur after a thorough impeachment process. This, according to his legal team, is rooted in the constitutional framework and historical legal practices. However, critics argue that such a broad interpretation of presidential immunity could set a precedent that shields presidents from accountability, even for actions that may be considered unlawful. The D.C. Circuit's upcoming oral arguments and, potentially, the Supreme Court's eventual decision will play a crucial role in determining the legal implications of Trump's claim to immunity. The legal maneuvering in this case also brings attention to the broader issue of election interference and the challenges in holding public officials accountable for their actions. The accusation of election interference is a serious matter, and the legal system's handling of this case will likely have implications for future instances where former presidents are accused of misconduct. It's important to note that Trump's insistence on the dismissal of the indictment is not a unique legal strategy. Presidents often invoke legal protections to shield themselves from various forms of legal scrutiny during and after their terms. However, the application and interpretation of these protections, especially in cases of alleged election interference, remain complex legal terrain. The Supreme Court's decision not to intervene immediately indicates a cautious approach to such a significant legal question. By allowing the D.C. Circuit to hear the arguments first, the Supreme Court might be seeking a more comprehensive understanding of the case before making a final decision. As the legal proceedings unfold, the public is likely to witness a clash of legal principles, with Trump asserting presidential immunity and the opposing side arguing for accountability. The outcome of this case could have far-reaching implications for the balance of power between the executive branch and the legal system. Regardless of the legal intricacies, Trump's claim that his actions were part of his duty as president raises broader questions about the scope of presidential authority and the responsibilities that come with the highest office in the land. It prompts a reflection on whether challenging election results falls within the bounds of presidential duty or if it should be subject to legal scrutiny, especially when allegations of interference are involved. The coming weeks will undoubtedly bring more clarity to this legal battle. The D.C. Circuit's oral arguments and the potential Supreme Court review will provide a more nuanced understanding of the legal principles at play. The case not only delves into Trump's specific situation but also touches on fundamental aspects of the U.S. legal and political system, making it a closely watched and consequential legal proceeding.